This is segment 2 of Civil Discourse Now. This is January 28th, 2012. I'm Mark Small, co-host Paul Ogden. We have with us today guests Pat Andrews and Matt Stone. We're coming to you from Big Hat Books in Broad Ripple. World Book Night is April 23rd, 2012. If you sign up at worldbooknight.org by February 1st, you can select from a list of 30 books, one book that you would like to give away, and then you let them know. Liz will have the books here. You'll get 20 copies of one of the 30 chosen titles, and you pick. There's a pickup party here on April 16th, and then on April 23rd you can give those copies away to anybody you want. It's the idea is to get people to read. So
a pickup party, Mark? Said there were single guys like me can go.
No, Paul. I
Should you talk about that with your wife?
Well, no, but I don't know about Paul's swinging single lifestyle. We're talking about the Super Bowl and the restrictive ordinances that have been in place. We ended the last segment because we've run out of time, and Pat, you were right in the middle of explaining the ordinance.
Okay, gotten to the point where talking about the restrictions. And let me just say, it is not a restriction if the single individual in code enforcement who gets all the power of the yes or no doesn't make it restrictive. There is a fundamental issue that I have with the ordinance in that it places so much authority in one individual. There isn't any way the public can weigh in before the decision is made, nor is there any way the public can weigh in after the decision is made. That individual has been granted all of this power. So, but he has chosen in his discussions with the NFL to create some restrictions on what your sign can include. And as you all were saying, the rules that were promulgated after the ordinance, because again, the ordinance allowed the Code Enforcement Board to promulgate all of the rules, and all the rules, I requested what the rules might be before the ordinance went in, and I was told that they wouldn't even consider that until they got the ordinance.
Trade secrets.
So there was no way that the public could know what how restrictive the actual rules would be at the time the ordinance was passed. Nor could the counselors know what they were passing, because they gave all the authority, again, for making the rules to the Board of Code Enforcement.
And so, essentially, our political entity here, the City of Indianapolis, the consolidated City of Indianapolis and Marion County, gave to the NFL, by way of an individual who is non-elected, authority to enact and
to overrule our sitting ordinances and create on the spot new rules that others must meet if they want to put up a new sign that hadn't been there 30 days prior.
And just so we're clear,
Matt wants to weigh in.
Pat, what actually constitutes a sign? Because are these the only things that could be considered a sign?
No, the sign ordinance itself has a whole list of things, and it's pretty much anything that conveys information.
So it doesn't matter if it's stationary or being held.
No,
or
you
on
can
a
move.
wall.
You can have a sign on a truck, even though that's supposedly illegal by our ordinances.
Right.
There's some discussion of whether it's an enforceable illegality. You can have a projection, a laser projection onto the side of a building. If it's conveying any information, that becomes a sign. It is illegal in Marion County to have such a thing unless this one individual says, yeah, go right ahead. I approve this one.
I remember when this was being passed, and as someone who only does politics, part-time, it's hard for me to keep up with all of this altogether. But I remember a counselor saying that this wasn't specifically for the Super Bowl. And it's kind of, the Super Bowl, because we can't say that word. But it seems to happen like this in politics all the time, where, as Mark was pointing out earlier, where we pass these laws and we make these definitions for how these laws apply, and we all know what they're actually for. But well,
I think it's important also to understand that the NFL, the National Football League, as distinguished from the National Forensic League, of which
Oh,
I was a member. Yeah, I had a double ruby.
It's like the CIA is different than the Cultural Institute of America.
Or the Culinary Institute.
Culinary, I'm
That's
sorry,
more
yeah.
important.
At Cornell. But the National Football League is a 501c6 corporation, which means it's a not-for-profit. So it is squeezing these millions and millions of dollars out of the people of Marion County and actually the citizens of Indiana, not out of any intent to profit itself. Of course, it's a corporation, so it has no soul. But it is
But
not.
it is a person.
It is a person?
That's what remember Robin
Oh,
said.
that's right. They're people, friend. Corporations are people.
The
But
Supreme Court, I believe, said that.
well, it kind of did. But see, I think that's going to change once the amendment is made. But be that as it may, the NFL has basically said, you want our game? You want a game in your city? Then you're going to have to take everything we tell you. And so we're going to be paying a lot. If they do a flyover of jets costs $450,000. And if they do a flyover, why? It's a dome. They're going to have the dome closed. So what, they're going to watch the flyover on the Arbitron in the stadium?
But the,
I think
the TV will have it all over the world that we have actual motorized aircraft that can fly over in
I think it's kind of ironic when we have the sports columnists in this town, like Bob Kravitz criticizing the expense of the optional dome opening thing, where it's been used like 5-6 times since the things were built. And I think it's worth pointing out that to be fair to the NFL, that we're not the only city that has ever passed a clean zone ordinance. I remember Houston passed a similar law last year, and what was it before, Orlando or whoever hosted in 2009? I don't follow sports, so.
There was what was the northern location at? Minnesota?
Detroit.
But the point is that all these cities have passed these clean
Well,
zone
but they've gotten
ordinances.
bigger.
Yeah.
The clean zones become bigger.
But
It
the
used to be
question
real
shouldn't
small.
be that there was a precedent set somewhere. The question should be whether the city of Indianapolis has any kind of self-respect and self-stature to say there are limits to what we will do to have the NFL come here.
Of course, that's silly. We have no self-respect here as a city.
Yeah, you have to,
We-
you
but-
have to remember that we are a small town, and we should be
We're not that
grateful
small.
for these big city people in nice suits to
Well,
grace
biggest
us with
city
their
in the
presence.
Indianapolis has a hell of a lot to offer. It really does. But the mental attitude of people who live here, mostly people who were born here, is that we're third rate
Yeah.
and will never amount to anything. And that attitude reflects in how much we will give away in order to get some attention.
And so we, for example, invited the then Baltimore Colts to relocate here to Indianapolis. And at the time, Robert Irsay, he had bought the Los Angeles Rams for like $19 million. Jim Irsay today is a billionaire. Now, it wasn't because of the financial
Genius.
gain, from Baltimore. It was all by bringing the Colts here because we gave them such tax breaks and built facilities for them. We built 2 stadiums for them.
I saw Mayor Hudnut speak about a week ago. And he said they were going to build a stadium regardless of if the football team was coming or not. They were just kind of crossing their fingers
No, that
to
was-
hope that it would happen.
He was prescient because he knew that there would be a movie in the future that said, if you build it, he will come.
Yeah, it had to happen. Yeah.
Let's talk about the other side. The argument is we're going to have 150,000 people here. I don't know what those numbers are based on.
I think that's an accurate number. I actually work at a hotel, and even though there's only about 70,000 people going to the actual game, we're talking about caterers and extra. I'm sure that we're getting security forces from outside of Indianapolis coming here. There will be. I think that's a reasonable figure.
Well, I would want to know
100,000.
what are the numbers like Tampa had, or what did you say was the Miami? How many Miami had? Because a
Detroit,
lot of people are going to go to a warmer climate.
Detroit never released the numbers. Detroit had projected a big profit that the city was going to realize as a result of the NFL having the Super Bowl in Detroit. But, I mean, the sale of Kevlar vests alone would have been staggering. But they never released those figures because everything turned out to be a lot less. And I apologize about the Kevlar bit. I mean, it applies to any large city or rural area anymore in the United
Detroit
States.
is Detroit.
But they never released those figures because they were a lot lower than the city suffered a loss. A city that couldn't afford to suffer a loss, like any city here in the United States could these days. But we get then to this ordinance where they're telling us not only like on these signs. The signs here technically are in violation of the ordinance because they're temporary. We haven't gotten them approved prior. We mentioned the Super Bowl on them, but also the ordinance requires that a certain percentage of the sign have the Super Bowl logo on it.
60%. Yes.
In the clean zone.
In the clean zone. 20% in like
I did not see
broader
that.
Cultural districts.
in the cultural districts. Well, the whole thing is though, it's like you have to apply to express yourself. And I'm sorry, a commercial speech, there can be restrictions that are reasonable on it, but commercial speech enjoys
one
First
of
Amendment
the
protection.
bars, I saw a news article, Paul posted it on his Facebook page, that they bought the sign from the Super Bowl committee or whatever, but then they couldn't hang up the sign because they needed to get a permit from code enforcement to just hang up the sign.
Yeah, and it wasn't a bar.
Unlike these other events, like the FFA comes here, or what's the nerd convention? Gen Con.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to get slammed on that for my Twitter feed. But
You
they
don't
put
know
up. They put no. I don't. I'm not that much of a nerd.
Right.
But
Now that's
But-
too bad.
but
I am that much of a
the
nerd.
bars and Steak and Shake and other restaurants, they put up signs for these events, and there's no problem at all. Code enforcement has never felt the need to go. But what about Mark? What about the other argument that this will kind of this puts Indianapolis on a world stage? People who had never thought of coming here for a convention, for a corporate meeting or whatever, would think, hey, Indianapolis handles the Super Bowl, maybe they can handle my next Bain Capital reunion tour.
Okay, so they know that Indianapolis will whore itself out and give as good a deal as possible to whomever it is that's coming in, and we'll actually pay them to come here, and we'll lose money. That's a really good image to have to the world.
But
I knew
that's
what
exactly what's been going on anyway. I would like to just step back 1 second and note that Indianapolis worldwide is probably best known for the 500.
Yes.
And they bring in over 300,000
And
people every year.
very little
They don't get largesse from the city of Indianapolis. They put on an event that's a world-class event, and what, they're up to 4 events now a year? Not all to the 300,000. But that's twice as
And the
big as
motorcycle.
being projected for the Super Bowl. So Indianapolis Speedway certainly has the expertise to do this and do it well and cast out a worldwide image of Indianapolis is very favorable. So we didn't, this. I don't actually have a problem with the Super Bowl itself being here. I have a problem with it being shrouded in secrecy as to what it's going to cost the taxpayer. I have a problem with the Super Bowl ordinance and how it is not open to the public to have input, either before or after decisions are made. But Indianapolis, again, didn't. It has something to celebrate. And we do 4 or 5 times a year already through the Motor Speedway.
We'll be right back. It's the end of the second segment.
Hey, Newt.